What is up, guys? Oh, sorry about that. But anyways, I am back, and this is the DayZ map. And I figured I would, since I posted those beginner guides, I'd do a little guide here. Now, one thing that everybody else is going to be able to do that for some reason mine doesn't do is you can click on these things and it'll pop up a thing of loot, what all loot will spawn there, what percentages it is. But I know generally good enough pretty much everything on this map that's of importance to tell you guys what all spawns there, the majority of what spawns there, how good of a chance stuff spawns there, and what's important and what's not. So first things first, we're going to go ahead and start off with the three main cities on the coast, and that would be Chernogorsk, as you see here, Elektrozavodsk, and Berezino. So I guess we'll start off with Chern. Alright, now these right here, these are hospitals, and these are fire stations. These are supermarkets. All these are just smokestacks. These things that you see here. And then this is a high yield building. A high yield building, the yield of something doesn't mean it drops good or bad loot. It's how much loot it drops. So all these little yellow dots are small yield buildings or low yield buildings, and they won't have many loot spots, but that doesn't mean they're all bad. Most of these little ones, you can expect to get some generic loot there, like drinks and whatnot, but most of them aren't that great. High yield buildings, a lot of high yield buildings aren't that great. Like over here is the big parking lot thing, and it drops a lot of stuff, but you know, not that much great stuff. This high yield building I don't know too much about, but it's probably about the same as far as that goes. But on to the buildings that you're going to want to check in Chern. Obviously the supermarket. Supermarket has a good chance to drop guns. You know, it's pretty common that you'll find a Makarov or a Lee Enfield or a Winchester or something like that in a supermarket, but there's also a really good chance of it dropping stuff like maps, compasses, boxes of matches, stuff like that. And they almost always, unless they're looted, have a bunch of hydration and food. So anytime there's a supermarket and you know it's not too risky to go in, you always want to go in there. And they have a lot of loot spots. Secondly, fire stations. Fire stations are military buildings, so they're going to drop military items like military weapons, you know, submachine guns, assault rifles, assault shotguns, even sniper rifles, and even, you know, low levels, not necessarily low level stuff, but weapons that aren't necessarily military grade, like Lee Enfields, you know, Winchesters, Makarovs, stuff like that. It'll still drop those too. And it'll drop a lot of ammo for military stuff. It'll drop grenades. You can still find hydration and food in there. So fire stations are always really good to loot, but since they're so good to loot, there's also a better chance than most buildings that you will find a player in there. So you have to watch your ass whenever you're looking through fire stations. Secondly, all these are medium yield buildings, and pretty much every medium yield building is good. There's always usually a chance to find, you know, run-of-the-mill weapons, food and water and whatnot. All these in here are bars, and bars have a pretty good amount of loot spots, and they still drop good loot. I've even seen people find like 74s and Cobras and stuff in there, and it's really common to find stuff like Makarovs, revolvers, Lee Enfields, and stuff like that in there, as well as plenty of food and water. And that's what all these are. These right here over here are apartments, and they're medium yield as well. They hold a little bit more loot than these bars here do, and I also see better stuff spawn there more commonly. So apartments are better than these bars, but as well, people know they're better, so there's also a better chance you're going to find people there. Hospitals. Hospitals drop medical loot. Medical loot is extremely important because, especially before this last patch, when they made legs harder to break. When you break your leg, you are fucked unless you have a morphine auto injector. Because you know, you might live with a broken leg, but you can't. You can stand up, but you can't walk. You can't crouch. You have to crawl. And it makes it really hard to navigate things, let alone, you know, the lack of speed that you have after that. So hospitals are definitely good. They also drop bandages, EpiPens. EpiPens are used to wake up an unconscious player. They drop blood bags, which are also extremely important. One substitute you can use for blood bags, though, is finding farm animals, especially cows, and that meat will give you, I think it's 800 health. I don't know, it's between like 700 and 1,000. And cows drop like 8 or 9 meat, I think. So that can also be used. But excuse me here for a second. Oh, sorry about that. I'm using my Astros for the mic, and my ear was really itchy, and it wouldn't go away. So, you know, hospitals are extremely important, but they're also going to have, you know, people there, and you have to, you don't have to, but the majority of the loot at a hospital is going to be inside the hospital. To get inside, you have to break the windows, and you know, you can attract zombies, players, all that by breaking those windows. You can also find loot on top of the hospitals and by the dumpsters behind hospitals, and they're going to be in boxes, and you might not see the loot, but if you walk up to, it's an upside down little box. If you walk up to it, you know, hit G or scroll or enter, or however you know, loot things. Everybody does it a little bit differently, but just loot it, and you know, you might find shit in there, or you might find a motherload. So yeah, hospitals are important. This right here, these are all military tents. Not every city has these. In this area right here, this is the no-no zone, because unless you really want to check that, or you have buddies and, you know, weapons to defend yourself, you don't want to go here, because this area right here is high traffic, maybe the most high traffic area in the game. And there's a good chance you're going to get into a firefight and probably die, because it's not uncommon at all to run into 3 separate people around this little area right here. But at the same time, these military tents, and once again, you know, low yield buildings aren't always bad, because these things can drop, you know, military grade weapons, they can drop health stuff, all kinds of shit. So good loot, scary area. That's about it. Another thing over here is this medium yield building. This is a church, and churches are good too. Churches are good. They can spawn, you know, weapons, food, you know, the whole nine as far as that goes. So churches are good to go in as well. They also tend to be high traffic for players, though, because I don't really know why, but I tend to find a lot of fucking people in churches. Maybe they won't get their worship on. But moving on over to Electro. Now, Electro, this whole area right here is typically not very traveled. So if you're gonna loot, and you just want to loot, you know, looking for some low yield buildings, this is typically a pretty good place to go. This is a high yield building right here. I don't really ever find anything in this building. And there aren't that many loot spots in it, to be honest, so it's a good building to get away from zombies, unless people decide to be dicks and barbed wire one of the other places, and then it's pretty much a fucking death trap. So all in all, I tend to avoid this building right here. This area over here is where you're going to find the majority of the people, between the hospital, the high yield building, the supermarket, over to these 2 fire stations. Now, Electro is a really good place to look, because although there's not too many medium yield or higher loot spots, there are 2 fire stations, and that means twice the chance of military loot, but that also means even more than twice the chance of players. A lot of people like to player kill here, like the other spot that I was talking over there, the no-no zone, because it's such a high traffic area. The hospital, you know, we've talked about hospitals. This is a bar right here, so that's good. Supermarket, we've talked about those. This high yield building, some people call it the offices, some people call it the school. I've even heard people call it a hospital, but that doesn't make sense to me. But I typically call it the offices or the school. I don't know, just call it either one, really. It's a good building. It spawns. There's a good chance you'll find, you know, maybe a Lee Enfield or a Winchester. I think it can also spawn some other better weapons. There's a good chance you'll find, you know, maybe a Makarov or something like that. A really good chance at generic loot, you know, like I was saying before, food, water, stuff like that. A really good chance for ammo, and also a really good chance for players. But it has a bunch of loot spots, and it's a good building to check if it's safe. Um, I think I have probably died more in this area right here than any other area in the map. Um, I think I'm getting close to being tied at the airfield, but I think this one still takes the cake for that. So Electro, it's not a huge city, but it is a good city to check, especially in unpopulated servers. But you gotta be careful, you know, in any major city. You don't want to get shot. Let's see if we can zoom out here a little bit and move on over. While I'm scrolling through here, these things right here, these are deer stands, and deer stands have a high chance for military loot as well. They are not high yield at all. They usually only have 1 or 2 loot piles, and between, you know, 2 and like 10 items. But they can spawn military loot, so they might be worth checking out. They can also spawn zombies though, so you gotta watch yourself on that. But they're pretty easy to, you know, just kind of crawl by if you really want to get in there. Right, now on to Berezino, which is all in all the biggest city in the game. It's spread out, but it's fucking huge. So let's start over here. These are apartments right here, and I don't know about anybody else, but for me they've been pretty fucking glitchy. I've broke my leg in these apartments twice for no fucking reason, and this is getting annoying. Come on. Anyways, so you might want to be careful in there. I don't know why is it doing this to me. I don't know if that's just me or for everybody or what, but those are good buildings to check. If this thing doesn't fucking stop it, I'm gonna break my fucking screen. You know, a lot of low yield buildings. I'll just zoom out like this. You get the gist of it. This high yield building right here is one of those school / office things, so that's also a good building to check. One thing about Berezino is you might not think so, but I've noticed there's a lot of player traffic in Berezino. Majority of it is right in here, from what I've seen. But I take it they can probably be anywhere. Another good thing about Berezino, though, is there are two supermarkets. So that means, you know, twice as much loot. And there's a hospital, too. Now, technically, the percentages of drops are the same as every other hospital, but I swear I get more loot from that hospital than any of the other ones. Every time I've gone there, all, you know, 2 or 3 of those boxes have been just stacked with medical supplies. So Berezino, there aren't many spawns around it. You're gonna have to walk a little bit if you want to get there, but it is a good place to check, especially in this area, because I've never seen a person in this area over here. And there are medium yield buildings there. But moving on from the major cities, in between all this, you're going to see a lot of these little places like this and these medium yield buildings in between. Most of these medium yield buildings are barns, and they're going to have a white exterior with like a reddish roof. And they're really good places to check. They have a decent amount of loot spots, and there's a good chance that you're going to find at least a double barrel rifle in one of them. Or a double barrel shotgun, excuse me. And they can also spawn other stuff. So those are always good places to check, and there typically aren't players there just because they're in between major cities and there's so fucking many of them. Moving on to some of these other things right here. I think there's 3 of these on the map. There might be 4, but I'm pretty sure there's just 3. There's Rog, Zub or Zub or whatever that is, and Devil's Castle. And these are all like, it says little castles. And I'm pretty sure it's Rog. It might be Zub, but it's a helicopter can spawn on top of one of them. But that's not what's important. What's important is they have a lot of loot spots. They spawn military loot and lots of ammo. So they are good places to go. But like all the other places that spawn military loot, they are high traffic areas. Not as high traffic as, say, fire stations or something like that, but it's not uncommon at all to find players there. So you have to watch yourself with that, especially in Devil's Castle. I don't know if it's just because it's named Devil's Castle or what, but it tends to see a lot of activity. Next place we're going to move on to is Stary Sabor. Pretty run-of-the-mill city, except for this right here. What this is right here is about, I think it's 12 military tents. And one of the most farmed areas in the game, because you don't see many zombies around them, and it's just easy to farm the area. You can just empty them out, they'll respawn stuff. It's a great area to farm, but also very player prone, so you have to watch out for them. I was just recording the other day whenever I was here and got in a firefight with a player, and broke each other's legs, and he fucking aborted, and I was like, fuck this, I'm with you. So yeah, escaped, but barely. Got lucky. And then the most dangerous area in the game, the airfield. If you're gonna find a sniper anywhere, it's probably gonna be at the airfield. The area is worth it to go to, but you have to be ready to die, because if a sniper sees you, there's really not anything you can do unless you see him first, because it does not take much to die in this game, and they'll love to kill you. But all these hangars right here, military loot. Fire station, military loot. There's other buildings. Lots of military loot in this area. You're pretty much guaranteed to find some type of AK or maybe an 870, or even, maybe like a DMR or an M14 or something like that. Not uncommon to find that kind of stuff there. Maybe, for the DMR and the M14 and such, but finding like an AKM or, a 74 is not uncommon at all here. I've been there, and there's been 5 of them there. 5 AKs. So, very sought after area, very dangerous area, but a very rewarding area. And I think that is just about it for the main spots you want to check. I'll go ahead and show you this little area too. Here's an airstrip. These 2 hangars right here also spawn military loot. So is this building right here beside it. And then right over here, and here's some military tents. There's no loot spots there, so I don't think they spawn loot. I don't know. I typically don't go there because there's a bunch of players, and it's not really worth it to me. But there are 4 deer stands, and they all spawn military loot. So that's a good area to go. There's a couple other airstrips. There's one up here. I think there might be one more, but I don't think so. So that's some of that. And over here, ooh, forgot about Green Mountain. Green Mountain, not too uncommon to find players here, honestly. Although it is kind of out in, nowhere. But there is a truck here that will spawn a lot of military loot. And if you want to go there, if you just want to check it out, there's also a big, tower here. It's a pretty cool place to go. And then you've got a bunch of other towns here, like Zelenogorsk right there, and Vybor up here. All kinds of other places that also, have good loot. Krasnostov. All kinds of places. It's a huge map. I think it says on the website it's 225 square kilometers. If you want miles, you can figure out how to do the math on your own, because I don't really care to. But it's a huge map. There's a lot of possibilities, but The three main cities are the places you're gonna want to go off the start. Dangerous but rewarding, and it's where you're gonna find the good loot. And you might not want to do that. You might want to go through if you just want to kind of survive and do that whole thing. See how long you can live without running into players and getting into firefights. You can definitely run off the barns. It's harder. It's a lot harder, but it's not at all impossible. You're gonna have to do a little bit more picking as you go and whatnot, and you probably won't find too much good loot unless you start taking some chances. But you can do that. You definitely can. But yeah, I think that's about it. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments or PM. And I will catch you guys on the flip side. Peace.